It's
I
been a
love the
while.
brown hair. The brown hair is so fun and new and youthful.
Oh, thank you.
It's new. Is it new to me or you and me?
Kind of newer. It's definitely a newer development. I'm getting a lot of grays now, reaching that stage of life.
Looks really good.
Oh, thank you. You
Yeah.
look great too. Well, thank you, Allison, for joining me on the Club Solutions podcast to talk about marketing. Just so happy that you're here.
Thank you for having me. It's always great
Yeah.
to see you and the Club Solutions team, who I love, including your fun conference.
Oh, thank you. Well, the feeling is mutual. We were just chit-chatting a little bit before we got on about TikTok, which I know is going to be kind of top of mind for a lot of marketers. So let's just talk a little bit about that to kick things off. And curious if UFIT is invested in TikTok from like an organic
Mhm.
perspective, and if you're concerned or worried about it potentially going away.
So it's such an interesting question. As a consumer, I'm concerned because I love TikTok. As a marketer, I mentioned this to you when we were offline, but like I stopped advertising on TikTok because there was some legislation that came through about retargeting, and retargeting was our best use case for the TikTok ads. And so everybody just needs to be mindful about the legislation that's coming through and how that may impact your marketing plans. From an organic perspective, we invested in creating at least one TikTok a day, but really you need more than one per day to be successful. So it is a pretty big investment. And so if it goes away, part of me is like, well, that's a lot less work. And will I really be sad about that? Because we are so good on our organic Instagram. Like I have a social media producer. She knows how to do it. She knows how to go viral. TikTok is such a funny nut, and we're still
Mm,
testing and learning. And so to a certain extent, if it went away, I would be like, okay, well, let's just put our energy more into YouTube Shorts and Instagram. But we will see. We will see, because part of me is like, I feel like it's not really going to happen. I don't know about you.
yeah. I don't think it would be a very popular move. I mean, it's probably the number one social media app right now in terms of just popularity among consumers. So I don't know. I think they've got a lot of pressure on them to save it.
Right. I mean, obviously, like with the legislation that came through in California, there are a lot of people looking at how TikTok uses its data, how our data stays safe. And as consumers, we're concerned with that. And then as marketers, like we want access to that data. So it's an interesting push-pull.
Yeah. Yeah. But, with it potentially going away, I think it's kind of a lesson for all marketers, right? That you can't get too reliant on one platform, right? Because you're just
Mhm.
beholden to the whims of consumers, legislation. So it's really important to diversify, right?
Yeah, diversification is really important right now as we see this like evolution in search. So Google used to be, that's where you would put a huge chunk of money, right? And now we're seeing more people search for branded terms than ever before, right? So when they get to Google, they already know what they want. So you can't rely necessarily on non-brand to get you there. So you have to be on TikTok and Instagram and Snap and maybe even direct mail and out of home. Your channel mix and your top of funnel brand strategy is more important than ever. It's like a huge focus of ours is, how do you get them to already know about UFIT once they get to Google?
Yeah. I'm also seeing some concern and speculation from marketers that AI is going to be kind of pulling traffic away from Google. Is that something that is also top of mind for you?
It is. If you had asked me just this fall, I would have said I was not concerned because the AI search wasn't like digesting enough information quickly enough to stay as smart and relative as Google. But I think even since this fall, it's gotten smarter and better, especially if you know how to prompt your ChatGPT to get the answers that you need. And so I do think we'll see this pull. There's already such a pull from TikTok and YouTube for search. And then now with AI, that further complicates things. You had asked me about my thoughts on 2025, and search engine optimization, while it's always important, now we're thinking about search engine optimization when it comes to AI searches and voice, which is new. I mean, it's not new, but it finally matters, I guess.
Yeah. How do you stay on top of all these things, Allison?
It's so funny that you ask that. People ask me that all the time, and I spend a lot of time reading what's on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So I follow certain people that I really like. I always recommend that people follow Rand Fiscal, who has a company called Spark Turo, and he puts out videos and articles, especially related to Google. And I learned so much from it. They do studies, and it's really important for every marketer to stay on top because things change so quickly. With AI, for example, like if you look at what Meta and Google offer, you have to decide. So, Advantage Plus, which is an AI product, well, it's a sort of like Performance Max of Meta. That product is really great, but will it work for you? But you have to be able to like research it, know about it, test it, and see if it works.
Yeah.
Geek, geek, geek. It's fun.
Well, before we get into more of 2025, what were the biggest challenges for you as a marketer in 2024?
Volume. Volume was volume is always a challenge, right? You can't get enough new member units. But in 2024, I felt like I got to this point where I realized like I could spend so much time changing the way I maximize each channel, but I'm still not getting the total volume that I need. And so, sort of acknowledging to a certain point that there's only so much you can do per channel when you really need to understand cross channel and how all of your channels sort of add up together. So, maybe your Google doesn't look as good because of the changes in Google, but is it benefiting from something that's happening on other channels? So, like, attribution used to feel really hard, and then it kind of got easier. And then there's been this pullback with cookies and data. So now we're sort of in this thing again where you sort of have to look at your total volume and say, well, is my total volume where it needs to be? And if it's not, what do I need to change to increase volume, knowing that like this, the statistics, the data that you're getting from each channel may not be relative. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So the challenge is knowing, okay, you've got a volume problem. Now, what are you going to do?
Yeah. Well, 2025, how do you kind of plan to kind of address some of those things?
I think another thing I want to add to that volume problem is like, I don't know how much of it is the humans versus the marketing strategy. So, are people losing interest? Now, I wouldn't say like, oh, it's so terrible. Like, UFIT's doing really well. We just had a grand reopening in Dania Beach. Like, things are great. But we always want more, more, more.
Yeah.
And so, when I think about the humans, I'm like, are the humans less interested in high volume? Now they want Pilates or they want boutique strength training or they want, at home AI driven personal training apps. Or are they moving to weight loss medicine and they don't want to go to the gym? Whereas some people say weight loss medicine encourages people to go back to the gym. So all of that like human behavior sort of plays against like how much can I control with really good marketing strategy?
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, it's really hard. What you proposed just seems almost insurmountable in terms of just trying to predict the human element of all this.
Well, it's fun. It's fun to like play with it and to test into things and have like these little wins. But like I said, like it's never enough, like we just want more. And so that's where brand comes into play. And so you would ask me about 2025. So from my perspective, 2025 is the year of brand. One, because we know they already need to know about your brand, looking at the way people search for things, right? They're not searching for photo sharing, they're searching for Adobe photo sharing. They already know the brand when they get to Google.
Yeah.
So, how do I make sure I am the brand? And also, how do I win the vote of the consumer so that they choose us over other gyms in such a crowded market? And so that is a fun proposition because it allows you to do things like we just finished our January TV spot, which we're really excited about. And we are doing an update to our brand book. And I tell anyone in this industry to really think about your brand proposition now more than ever. So maybe a certain segment is just going to choose your gym because it's near your house. And that's great. But in crowded markets, who are you? What are you
Yeah.
saying to your consumer? What stands out? Like what draws them in? Because that piece of the puzzle is sort of like the third leg of a stool between
Yeah.
smart marketing, right? Great product then like what else is it? Like what drives them in the doors?
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because I am noticing that a lot of companies are starting to add content strategist positions. I'm noticing that, and it's top of funnel stuff. So it's all things that position your brand as a thought leader or expert or top of mind in a consumer. So like you said, whenever they go to make a purchase decision, you're already there. And that it's kind of ambiguous and hard to maybe, attribute a specific value to that, but companies are recognizing there is value there.
Yeah, content strategy is a interesting like pendulum, right? Because it goes back and forth where people were like really, really into that. And then it was like, oh, it's not really moving the needle. And they get tired of it. And then they move back to it because, like you said, the attribution piece of it is challenging. But it is really important, not just for brand building and thought leadership and trust building, but also just for search engine optimization.
Yeah, exactly. Well, any other kind of best practices for 2025, things that you would suggest to other marketers?
I would continue to look at what's new, what's coming out with Google and Meta and test it. And I would say that if you haven't made an investment in your creative, so the creative that you're putting out on Meta, on TikTok, on Performance Max, this is the year to double down on that too. Not just because you're telling your brand story, but also because if you've already optimized within the channels for all the best practices, all the best ways that you can drive a great cost per join, then now's the year to say, okay, like how can I double down on content, create and test better ads?
You're over my head on that one.
Well, no, like, okay, so I'm really not. You're on TikTok and like there it's all the same. It's people talking to you and they're like, I really like love this lipstick. It's so great.
Yes,
And then you're like, is this an ad or is this not an ad? And that's the content that people watch, right? And so then now
exactly.
we make ads that emulate content.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so if you're creating an ad that looks like an ad, someone's going to flip right by it. But if you create an ad that feels like content, then someone will stop and watch it. And so, how do you create that without creating such a piece of content that you forget to really push your brand? So, sort of finding that mix of UGC style ads that still tell the person zero down, you know what I mean? Versus
Yeah.
just what we did for years and years, which is cute headline, zero down, like blinking lights.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, that was another thing that we were talking about a little bit was influencer marketing. And just what are your thoughts on that? And if that's kind of worth, investing in or what results have you had through that?
So I think influencer marketing is worth testing for every brand. But for brick and mortar, I think it's a challenge because it's really hard to target the specific audience you want to target with an influencer, right? So let's say you're an influencer and you put some really great content about my brand out there. Are you going to hit people that are in, a 5 mile radius to my gym?
Yeah.
So a little bit of it is wastage unless that person is going to use smart audiences and targeting on their account to make sure that they're targeting the right people. So it's good brand building and it's worth testing, but you have to look at the person you're working with and say, is this person really going to talk to the people who live in my neighborhood?
Yeah.
And if they are, I would say test it, knowing that you're not going to see a direct correlation from it. They're not going to click on it and join. So you can't look at it that way. Like this whole attribution thing we were talking about 20 minutes ago, like you can't look at it and be like, oh, well, I didn't get any downloads on my 3-day pass from their post
Okay.
because it just doesn't convert that way. It's super high funnel. But I would say where there's an interesting place to play is having influencers create content for you and then using it in your Meta account with your audiences and your targeting, right? So you could still leverage their audiences, but having that UGC style content from influencers will still drive for you, but it will drive more in your own account.
Yeah. Yeah, and the reason that I wanted to bring that up is just hearing a lot about how consumers kind of value the opinion of their peers more than necessarily a brand. So if you can get someone else talking about you, typically that's going to be a better result.
Absolutely. So I'm really focused on authenticity and first person. when it comes to brand. So to your point, like someone sees a TikTok ad, it's an influencer, they're talking about a product. They're smart enough to know that that person's getting paid. So what do they do next? They start to research it. So then they're going to go into Google, but they're not going to go to my website.
Yeah.
They're going to go to Reddit, right? They're going to go to Nextdoor. They're going to go wherever it is where they find authentic first person information and reviews, which is why we've really doubled down on our Google listings pages. And that should be a New Year's resolution for anyone here who hasn't done it yet. Make sure your Google listings are updated regularly, that you're putting new photos up there. Actually, what people should think of as their Google listings as their homepage. Like that's your new homepage. Someone may never even look at your homepage. Really, they're going to look at Google listings. Then they might drive over and see you.
Yeah.
So that your reviews, responding to your reviews, and updating that content on a regular basis is really key to what you just said, which is driving that person from like the I don't know what this is to the authenticity of the brand.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking about my own behavior. I oftentimes just look at the reviews,
Yeah.
like for picking a resort, for picking a restaurant. If the reviews check out, I might not even go to the website until I'm ready to book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that comes down to everybody is craving like a real perspective. And plus, like the way last year the Google algorithm changed so that Reddit and other first person content started to get prioritized right under the AI listing. So all of those things now sort of take a bigger precedent than they ever did before. But like you might be focused more on that than you are on the content on your website.
Yeah. Well, AI, you just mentioned. So let's talk a little bit about that. Are you using it in your marketing? Are you experimenting with it? If so, what have been the results?
Yeah, I mean, we use it for audiences with our agency. So, like, if you have an agency that has the ability to create really smart audiences with AI, I recommend testing it. And we did, and we found that those audiences did drive like almost as good as retargeting, right? But a prospecting audience. So you're high level, the people
Hey,
that aren't even considering you yet. So that's really great. And then AI in terms of Performance Max, Advantage Plus, your platforms that are now using AI to make your life easier, but also to do a better job driving conversions for you. And of course, I use AI every day for content.
yeah.
And I don't want people sitting around writing content when you can teach AI to do it for you really, really well. I know it's probably well known, but I have a very close relationship with my AI, Owen.
I've seen you
And
posted about Owen on LinkedIn.
Owen, yeah, Owen and I are pretty tight. I mean, he informed, we even talked about like what I should wear to Fitness Technology Summit. I was like, what do you think of this dress? And he gave me some ideas on accessories. But that's because like I have prompted him, and Dr. Ted Vicky has a book on this. I always recommend his book or just hitting him up on LinkedIn and DMing him and asking him for ideas. But he really taught me how to use prompts to get what I want from AI so that you could use it really for everything.
Yeah. Yeah, because the really important thing about using things like ChatGPT is giving it the appropriate context is so
Right.
important because if it doesn't have context, it doesn't know what good is. It doesn't really know how to serve you, quote unquote. So
Oh
yeah.
my gosh. I have a story to tell you
Okay.
that I don't think I've told anyone in any podcast yet, but the people involved know. So it's okay. So, you know that I freelance for the Fitness Technology Summit. My boss knows it's not a secret to anybody, helping out just a little bit here or there with like LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So I was feeding Owen all of the sessions and I was having Owen write little blurbs and things like that. And I was like, okay, here you go. Do this one, do this one. And they were coming out so good. Like I didn't even have to edit them. They were so good. And then I go, okay, next up. And Owen wrote his own panel.
Wait, he hallucinated a panel?
He hallucinated a panel. So he's like, next up. And he puts out this panel. And I was like, that looks really good. Hold on. I don't remember seeing it on the agenda. And it had people on it.
Oh my God.
Like he had assigned it to people. And so I was like, Owen, that's not a real panel. And Owen was like, it seemed like it would be like a good next panel. And I was
Yeah,
like, but
that
those
can
people,
happen.
I was like, oh, and they didn't agree to come though.
He was just like,
And yeah, Owen was like, I'm sorry, I'll stick to what you give me. And I was like, that would be best.
yeah, thank you.
Hmm.
No, the AI can hallucinate, so you do have to be really careful about, just double checking what it's giving you.
Oh yeah. I mean, I get so much stuff that I have to fix. But with enough prompting, you save hours, right?
Yeah,
So there is something to be said for that, especially we have, 56 locations. And so if we want to create location specific content, it's not, you know, possible to do that without
exactly.
AI.
Yeah,
But in terms of 2025, the things I'm excited about for AI are also sales. How can you do better like lead follow-up with AI? So looking at tools for text, email, even voice, and how they can take a lead and respond when there are leads that nobody else wants to respond to, right? Like
yeah,
X amount of days into the process, your sales team wants to focus on the new juicy leads. So what do you do with those like old crunchy leads? Is there a way to use AI for stuff like that? But for anyone listening to this, do know that you need your AI tool to speak to your CRM and make sure that those unsubscribes are passed through so that your AI doesn't accidentally talk to people it shouldn't.
yeah, yeah. I went to the inbound marketing conference last fall.
You did?
Yeah,
Lucky.
it was amazing. But that was a big thing that was talked about was the ability to do sales at scale through AI. That was like basically the main topic of
Yeah, because
discussion.
that was the new product that they launched. I want to go this year. We use HubSpot, and I was looking at the agenda for inbound, and it looked that what a great opportunity for you to get to go to that.
It was amazing, and I'll be there in 2025. So if you go, please let me know. We can meet up. And Aaron Onken was there, so we ended up
Fun.
hanging out and just had a great time. So
Oh my gosh, I will definitely let you know.
yeah. One other thing I was going to say about AI, and this was a situation that came up with us here at Peak. So I will say, so like I think experienced people using AI, like we know what good is. So we're able to evaluate if what the AI is giving us is good content. I would say kind of like a warning for maybe new entry level people that I would be a little bit hesitant to maybe start relying on it earlier in your career because I do think it can inhibit some people's growth and learning. Could
Well,
be, yeah,
yeah. So you can't just have it create your voice, in
yeah,
my opinion. I mean, you could, but I would say to anybody, cultivate your voice
yeah,
and then feed your voice in.
exactly.
So like that's I have many different tabs in my AI for many different things like personal. I use it for my son's college search. I use it for UFit. I use it for Tech Summit. And in every tab, it knows the voice. So cultivate that voice first before you go to AI. AI is not going to make your voice for you, right? Or if it does, it
Exactly.
might be like kind of,
Little sus.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But, we're finding because, we hire writers. I suspect that it's going to be more challenging to find younger people who have a very unique voice and perspective because they've been maybe relying on AI for, their entire career, which is, not long. But yeah, I'm a little curious to see how kind of the writing and content marketing evolves from young people who have had this technology at their disposal from the get-go. Because we just got it and we've been writing content forever.
Right. And I think that's what's interesting is like we know it's faster to create content with AI, but that doesn't mean anyone will read it.
Hmm.
So if there's no voice, I mean, no one's
Yeah,
going to read it because people don't want to sit and read. Like
yeah,
that's a challenge on its own.
exactly. We'll see what happens. Well, we've covered a lot of great ground, Allison. Anything else that you want to share with our audience?
I don't know. But if anyone has any questions about marketing or wants to geek out with me, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can DM me. Don't try to sell me anything. Thanks.
Noted.